Yeah, I'm that big ass fan. Yeah.
I say like something. Like somebody mentioned at that meeting. They'll get their car.
But. Not outlaw. Anyway, yeah, we want to keep. Your battery.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's good to see her. Tribute support.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, not having the best.
I don't think they messed with the.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
The roof is.
it's on a condo, like there.
Right. Ready? Good evening, everyone. I will call to order the City of Laguna Beach Planning Commission meeting for February 5th, 2025. May I have roll call, please?
Commissioner Goldman, Commissioner Whiten, Commissioner Dubin,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg,
Here.
Chair Sadler.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, before we begin with our regular order, we will have a moment here for public communications at the beginning of the meeting. If anybody would like to speak to the Planning Commission on anything that's under the Planning Commission's general purview, but is not part of our agenda for this evening, now would be the time to do so. Is there anybody who would like to make any kind of public communication for non-agenda items? Seeing none, I will close the public communications and we will move on to the consent calendar, which apparently we don't have anything on the consent calendar. Is that correct? Okay, we will move on to our public hearings. And generally speaking, just a quick overview. Staff will provide a presentation to the commission. We may ask questions of the staff after they're done. We will then open the public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak on the item can come forward to the podium there. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, either before or after speaking. We ask that if you could print your name on the list that's on the table over there so that we can get the spelling of your name correct for the minutes, that would be appreciated. After members of the public speak, it'll go back to the applicant team, and they'll have additional time to give us additional information. And then we'll close the public hearing and go to deliberations for the commission. So we have 2 items tonight, item 5.1 and 5.2, which are both design review and coastal development permits dealing with fuel modification zones within the city. So they are both wow. They are both very similar and are both located relatively close to each other. So we will ask that staff combine those presentations together for us. So we'll hear both those items kind of together, and then our eventual motion will be made separately for those 2 different fuel modification zones. With that, we will move to Shavita, our senior planner, who will be presenting this item for us tonight.
Good evening, Chair and members of the commission. Hold on just a minute while I pull up the presentation for your view. Okay. Good evening, Chair and members of the commission. Shweta Sharma, Senior Planner, presenting items 5.1 and 5.2 for design review 24-2046, CDP 24-2047, and DR 24-2681, and the associated initial study mitigated negative declaration. The city currently maintains 27 fuel modification zones throughout the city, which have been established since the 1950s. The fire department is proposing to establish treatment protocols for fuel modification in zones FMZ 19 and 16 that are located in Lower Hobo Canyon and the Diamond Crest View area. The fuel modification zones consist of approximately 100-foot wide areas with reduced vegetation that will allow for fuel breaks to ensure protection of structures and property in case of wildfire. The fire department would oversee the construction and maintenance of these fuel breaks, and initial clearing is expected to occur as early as spring of 2025. As described in the city's fuel modification treatment protocols, hand crew treatments would be used in both fuel modification zones 16 and 19 in compliance with the California Coastal Act. The design review provisions require that fuel modification projects include an assessment of any potential biological impacts on undeveloped parcels with native vegetation, which has been analyzed as part of the initial study mitigated negative declaration. The two projects are nearly identical with the exception that Fuel Modification Zone 19 has an associated coastal development permit, and Fuel Modification Zone 16, it has a consolidated coastal development permit, which will be processed by the California Coastal Commission, and the Planning Commission will not be acting on this evening. Fuel Modification Zone 19 is located in the Diamond Crest View area, is an approximately 25.44 acres. Fuel Modification Zone 19 lies in a high, very high fire hazard severity zone, and any wildfire would present an immediate threat to structures. The project would establish fuel breaks directly along the wildland-urban interface to protect residential and public property. Fuel Modification 16 in Lower Hobo Canyon is approximately 13.66 acres and lies in a very high fire hazard severity zone. The required environmental analysis has determined that Fuel Modification Zone 16 contains a variety of intact and disturbed habitat containing multiple populations of big-leaved crownbeard, a state and federally listed threatened species, an intermediate Mariposa lily, which is a state-listed threatened species. Approximately 4.35 acres of FMZ 16 would be excluded from the fuel modification activities to avoid impacts to these special state status species. The reports which are discussed in the initial study, Mitigated Negative Declaration, has determined that with mitigation, any potentially significant impacts to the native vegetation would be reduced to less than significant. In Fuel Modification Zone 16, there's approximately 0.28 acres that would be excluded from the fuel modification activities to avoid any impacts to these special status species. The two projects have received 5 letters to date that are in support of the project and recommend approval as described. That concludes my presentation. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving Design Review 24-2681, Design Review 24-2046, and Coastal Development Permit 24-2047, and the associated initial study, Mitigating Negative Declaration, and the Mitigation Monitoring Reporting Plan. I'm available to answer any questions, as is the fire marshal, as well as the environmental consultant who prepared the initial study.
Great. Thank you, Shavita. Does the fire marshal or consultants want to make any separate presentation or anything to say other than being here to answer questions? Okay. Do we have any questions? Commissioner Dubin?
I don't have any for staff, maybe a couple for the fire marshal or chief.
Okay.
Is this the time for that or?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. And if you want to, you could either come to the podium or come to the table and just make sure that the microphone is on.
How you doing? I know that, there is some instances where herbicide or Roundup is going to be used on the project in a very limited number. Is there and I know that there's been talk about, the potential of that being, a environmental hazard or whatever, but can you just briefly explain how it's being used and why and where?
Good evening. Thank you. Robert Montagami, Fire Marshal. Right now, currently, as part of our treatment protocol, we have a pause on the use of any herbicide per direction of council for further study, see what the impact of not using the herbicide is versus using the herbicide that we've had, the effect of that by previous use. So currently, we are not using any herbicide as part of our treatment protocol.
Okay. Because it mentions it in the, a very limited use in terms of invasive species and
Correct.
and not carpet bombing the area with
Correct.
Agent Orange or something like that.
Correct. Targeted application of herbicide for invasive species only. You're correct.
But at
It's
this
not a
time,
wide use.
it's
At this time, it's been paused.
okay, because I did have a pretty lengthy conversation with Councilman Jones, who used to be I'm sure you're familiar with her. She was executive director of the Laguna Canyon Foundation, to get her take on that. And we had a discussion also about more organic herbicides, which are either salt or vinegar based, which are even worse environmentally, and any other synthetic herbicides outside of Roundup are less studied and potentially even more hazardous to even handle, let alone environmental issues. So I appreciate the fact that, you know, you potentially are not going to use any of that stuff at all. So thank you. So.
We have 27 fuel mod zones. How many have been processed, have come to the planning commission?
Thank you. So out of the 27, 10 of them are grazed, and 3 of them are private properties that are managed by private landowners or the water districts that own those. So the remainder, these are the final 2 that we're trying to obtain permits. And Zone 17 and 18, we're about to start the first round of cleanup or removal of the hazardous fuel there shortly. So essentially, let's see, 13, so 11. We have 9 that we've worked on, and 2 we're about to start, and the final 2 are the ones that we're just applying for right now.
Okay. The staff report says that the owners can opt out of the program and provide private maintenance. Can you explain how that would work and why that's allowed? It seems a little iffy.
Correct. So in order for us to be able to get on the property, we do need trespass agreements from various owners. And part of that is we allow them to opt out of the program, but they are responsible for maintaining the vegetation or the fuel that is on their property. And that is part of the agreement or part of the requirements, especially under Section 51184 of the California Government Code that requires the hazardous fuel to be reduced. In other words, weed abatement to be conducted on properties that are within a 100-foot boundary of a structure. So the onus would fall on the property owner if they do decide to opt out of this program.
Do you monitor whether it's actually been done by a certain time, the way brush removal is done? If
Yes,
it's not done in a timely manner, then does the fire department come in and do it?
So the opt-out usually involves private properties in fenced areas that wouldn't want us to get on there, or areas that wouldn't want us to clear outside of the fenced area. Very rarely we get any opt-out options on those properties. I would say we have very high, probably 99% success rate of getting compliance or getting cooperation or buy into this program. So very few have opt-out, and they are aware and keen. And if there's any issues with hazardous vegetation or fuel on there, we'll respond to any complaints or anything that our team out there do observe. We'll go ahead and respond to those issues. Yes.
So after this, do you have to come back to renew approval at any point?
So what happens generally is once we go through, after this, we'll submit our application to the Coastal Commission, and they have to go through their process. But the city's intent is, and we always do, is we maintain those permits in perpetuity. Because it's such an arduous process for us to go through this process, and it would be a waste of time and resources for us to allow those permits to lapse. So we will maintain them in perpetuity.
Great, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Kellenberg?
So just to follow up on that, so these are new fuel mod zones? These haven't been done before? This isn't going back and redoing one that's been done previously?
Correct. These are new zones that we're trying to establish, the final 2 zones that we're trying to establish.
I assume that this has been in process for a while and, you know, before the big fires up north. I'm curious, what have you learned from the disasters up north that might affect or change, you know, your thinking on this current kind of approach and regimen and dimension and process?
Yeah, Chief King, your fire chief, thanks for having us, bringing this up. We were able to go out and visit our firefighters that were out on the line. And whenever you have those winds that they were facing and they get in the defensive mode and just trying to protect the structures, it's really the ember cast that is problematic when it comes to structure protection. But they did not only verbally tell myself, the city manager, and the mayor that were with me for their visit, but they also provided some video of some of the fuel modification zones that they came across. And it's a lot of the energy is it goes away when it runs out of the thick, dead vegetation. So it burns through the areas that haven't been modified, and then the BTUs, the amount of heat that comes off, the intensity of the fire decreases when it hits the fuel mod zone, which is the way it's intended to be. And it's a great opportunity for not only the firefighters to protect those homes, but for any of the air resources to come in and knock down the fire. So they are effective.
And you still think that the 100 feet is the right dimension?
We're going to look into that. I think we're seeing fire conditions year after year within the state of California with these extreme conditions. And so the 100-foot has been in existence for quite some time, and we're having those conversations now with all involved parties to see if it would be feasible, see what's going to take, to look at some of the science. We're trying to make those decisions right now, and we'll see if we should be asking for more. Yeah.
To follow up on that, with the Pacific Palisades fires, did they have fuel modification zones around the perimeter of those neighborhoods? And were they just, those fuel modification zones just were overwhelmed or didn't work the way that they anticipated due to the extreme conditions?
I can't answer specifically, and maybe the fire marshal knows more, but we definitely saw some from the videos that were shown to us, some of the areas where there were fuel modification zones. One was on a ridge top and there were houses just adjacent to it, and it absolutely worked. But to the extent of how many they had, how well they were maintained, I couldn't answer that tonight.
Okay, Commissioner Goldman, any questions?
I got a couple more. If folks are interested in like understanding, what the hazards are around their properties, can they reach out to you guys and have maybe somebody either explain that to them or even do a site visit to go, hey, this is where the problems lie here, and here, and this is how you can deal with it. Is that something that is in the works or can happen?
Yes, absolutely. We have that program available. We have wildfire consultation inspection, which is a complimentary inspection, of course. It's a service that we offer in the fire department. If you access our website on the fire prevention webpage, there's a way for the residents to communicate with us and request an inspection. And we'll come out and gladly walk the property with you, the perimeter of the property, and provide you with further details of what you can do to further protect your home, such as home hardening or even defensible space, things that you can take, you can implement around your home to further protect your home. Absolutely. And we can also send you some documents with regards to low-cost retrofit as well. That's available on our website as well, and we can email that to you as well.
Okay, well, it's good to know for everybody in the community.
Absolutely.
I know you have to go and get Coastal Commission approval. Do they have a sense of urgency with this stuff? Because I know that could go on for 6 months or longer even.
Yeah, that's state agency. So we have conveyed that, and we will be conveying that through our permitting process. And I know, the news is out there, right, with all the fires. So
Yeah.
I hope they do. We really hope, and we're hoping, and we will definitely be communicating that with them during our permitting process.
I only have one other thing, and it's been some ideas, and they were kind of harebrained ideas maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but now they sort of start making like some sense. And that's, this concept of like the succulent fire break. And also there was a gentleman who was talking about a gray water system sort of around the perimeter of Laguna Beach that could be implemented in this. Are any of those things even, going from fantasy to reality at this point?
My first presentation to council after the fire, they asked for first impressions, and I said that we should not just try to jump in and solve the problem, but rewrite the problem statement. Everything that we've done is for the conventional fires that we've seen and known, but now again, like we're seeing year after year conflagrations that are moving not only through the wildland, but burning through neighborhoods in populated areas. I say no idea is a bad idea right now.
That's right.
Our two council members, Kemp and Whalen, who are the subcommittee for wildfire mitigation, they did that report in 2019. A couple weeks ago at the council meeting, they've reinstituted that committee, and we met for the first time already yesterday, and we're meeting with a lot of the stakeholders, neighboring agencies, water districts, and we all have open minds. And actually, we had the discussion about what other type of irrigation is possible out there, trying to look all over the world. Anyone that has it, we're open to any ideas. So
Okay, I just, because like I say, in years past, people kind of looked at those kinds of ideas as like, yeah, okay, that's fantasy. But now it's because we're in such a different time, and these events are getting worse and worse and worse, especially here in California. It just seems like any of these things that may, either slow something down or actually reduce the risk to the community would be worth looking into. And I know there's always a financial element in that, but what's it worth to save homes, so.
Right.
Anyways, thanks, Ken.
Yeah, and I guess with this being the last two fuel modification zones that the city is apparently, having to process, that maybe it doesn't matter at this point, but time-wise, I mean, how long did it take to get to this point for these two fuel modification zones? When did this process start?
it's hard for the fire marshal and myself to specifically answer that, but we know the application, the start of this was in 21. And I say it's hard for us because neither of us were employed here in 21.
So 3 or 4 years just to get,
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can see to try to speed up the process? Or, I mean, is there anything that, I know it's out of our hands as a planning commission and probably as a city, anything that the state legislature or anybody could do to try to
And that's what I was going to. Our elected officials are already making contacts with their constituents at the state level to see if we can get legislation to change and expedite this process for public safety.
Okay. And just, just for the public, the staff report on this and the amount of, environmental review for this is extensive. I mean, it's a 250-page report or something like that, and goes into a great deal of detail about exactly how this happens. It's a combination of using the goats for some of it, hand crews for some of it, and reading into it further. Also, I know one of the detractions pointed out about the goats were that they were indiscriminate in terms of what they eat, which is true. They will basically eat everything in their path. And so, they were not distinguishing between native and non-native plants and all that. But when you guys are creating these fire break areas and fuel modification zones, it's basically within the areas, trying to remove basically all the non-native stuff within those areas. But it's even the native species, the toyon and the ceanothus and things like that, those will even be cut back if they're large and stuff and further trimmed back, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, is it the same level of approval for the goats as it is for everything else? Or can you just bring the goats out there and let them eat?
No, in areas that are subject to coastal commission review, we cannot at all. That's not part of the treatment protocol that was approved. It's not part of our past practice either. And again, as they eat indiscriminately, it would be very difficult to protect the native vegetation out there. And native vegetation, not to get too deep into this, really does do some work. There's a science behind that. So we want to keep them intact, reduce them maximum down by 50% because they work as filters. As embers are cast from a peating fire, they work as a filter to really slow down some of those embers that would be coming into the structure or around the structure. So to serve a great purpose. So we wouldn't want goats to go out there and not only have an impact on the environment, protect the environment, but also giving us that extra tool to use or preventive measures.
Great. And just as long as it's a little bit unrelated, but as long as you guys are here, we were discussing the promenade last night, and one of the Well, one of the things that stood out to me, the difference between what happened in the Pacific Palisades fire and Altadena and versus our fire here in Laguna in '93 was, you know, a lot of the residential structures were hit hard here in town, but thankfully, you know, it didn't get into our downtown and commercial core. We didn't lose a bunch of commercial buildings. But as you stated, this amber cast idea of is really, you know, the threat where those embers can fly around for miles and stuff. Do you, I think what I heard last night was that there wasn't a real strong opinion about the type of trees that would be placed in the downtown area, eucalyptus versus other species. Did you have any strong feelings one way or the other about that?
We do. We did notice, and it's just a palette of vegetation that could be used in that. But in our planning meetings, we had those conversations with them. So we will also be a voice of influence in final decision making.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that touchy topic, the LA Times had an article last week about the trees that survived the fire. I'm sure you saw it. And Deodara cedar was one of, and conifers were survivors, as well as oaks and sycamores. You want to just, I know certainly the conifers are not on the list of approved species, but what's your thought about it?
Well, honestly, I'd like to defer that to one of my experts that's sitting here right behind me from Laguna Canyon Foundation, because they're the folks in the front line that really do have extensive knowledge on the species of trees and what the benefits or disadvantages of some species are. If I may ask Chris Gore to come up here.
And so if I may,
Sure.
once again, this question can be answered. We got to be careful. We're zeroed in on what's before us here tonight,
Okay.
which is the fire fuel. But of course, if
Okay.
the gentleman's here and has a short answer, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah, I would say there's certainly a lot of native plants that we could be planting. I did see some of the stuff that was on the list and it wasn't native. And my first thought was, oh, there could be native plants there instead. Not necessarily to do with fire, but I mean, there are types of oaks that are smaller that I don't know if they would fit into that space, but I think that would be great. So brief answer. I'd love to chat with you guys more if you guys want to reach out to us. So.
Great. All right. Apologize for getting a little bit off track. Okay. I will open it up, unless there's any other questions, open it up for public comment. If anybody would like to come up and speak on these items, please come forward and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Good evening, Matt Lawson. I think as most of you know, I served for about a dozen years on the Emergency Disaster Preparedness Committee, during which time I chaired the Fire Mitigation Subcommittee for essentially all of that time. So I got pretty much immersed in the issues around this. I also lived in Pacific Palisades for 7 years on Paseo Miramar, right where the fire started. My street is gone, my former street is gone, former neighborhood is gone, and the former community is gone. And the only difference between that community and this community is they had much better emergency circulation. They only lost about a dozen people. We might lose scores, even hundreds. So those are the stakes that we're talking about here. Now, I don't want to be in any way to contradict Chief King, who knows so much more about fire suppression and mitigation than I do. But I will mention one thing. This is not a new topic. This came up at the recommendation of former Chief Latendresse in September of 2013. And he introduced the idea that these very dangerous interior canyons, specifically Diamond Canyon and Hobo Canyon, needed to have significant fuel mitigation simply because they are so dangerous. If a fire were to start in either one of them, particularly in Diamond Canyon, you'd have multiple structures involved or likely fully involved before you could even get apparatus and firefighters on scene. It's that bad. In addition, you'd have in the case of Diamond Canyon, you'd have 3 different neighborhoods involved. Diamond Crestview, which is actually determined by the police department in their emergency evacuation time study several years ago as one of the 3 most access impaired in the entire city, and that's a high standard in Laguna Beach. You'd have Arch Beach Heights, which is also highly access impaired, and you have Woods Cove, which is currently not quite as access impaired, but is being undergrounded because of the risk there. Diamond Crestview is the only neighborhood in Orange County that in fact today has the kind of LA-type fire red flag parking restrictions, which are ticket and tow. That's the level of risk that we have there. So, I mean, we need to get this done. Council asked that it be done in 2013. Staff did absolutely nothing to move it forward for about 8 years until things became a little more urgent after the adoption of the 2019 fire safety and risk mitigation program. We need to move forward with this absolutely as soon as possible, because the sooner we get it done, the safer we're all going to be. And until we get it done, we stand at the same level of risk as they did in the Palisades and Lahaina and Paradise. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Good evening, Chair Sadler, Commissioners, and City staff. My name's Jerry Myers, local resident. I'm also a committee member for EDPC and the director of our CERT program. We have properties at 30502 Coast Highway directly below Hobo Canyon. But beyond just talking about what I own personally, if we talk about, this is part of preparing and making our entire town safe, not just Hobo Canyon or Diamond Crestview. We all know that fire spreads, everything burns, and we need to be able to have proper fuel mitigation around our properties to protect our properties and our loved ones in our life and our livelihoods and everything else. Having gone through the 93 fire, standing on Skyline at my uncle's house and watching the flames come over the hill at 60 miles an hour, I've never been that scared in my life. I don't want that to happen again. And we lost 400 homes. They've lost several thousands. The amount of distance that we have to protect ourselves seems inadequate given the flame spread, the ember cast, and knowing what a high wind event will do in a fire. If there's any way to increase that, there's Firewise communities, they recommend, there's the 300-foot zone, the 100-foot zone, and then what you need to do around your home. But first and foremost, and most importantly, along with the fuel modifications, if the people don't practice defensible space and home hardening, you can clear the land forever and still have overgrown properties, and the houses will burn from ember cast. So I am asking you to approve Design Review 242681 and 242026 and adopt a negative mitigation declaration to create FMZs 16 and 19. It's something we need to do. It's gone on, and as my colleague, past colleague from EDPC has said, this has gone on too long. I know we're not in control of what Coastal does, and I'm hoping that some way we can turn some handles and get our legislatures to talk to Coastal and tell them to get off their hands and make any type of a fire emergency preparation first on the plate before you build a restaurant or before you build a house or do a new housing development. We need to take care of our fuel mitigation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, Rick Tolt. I had a couple questions. One is I wasn't sure from the what I was hearing from the fire department is the property owners in the Diamond Crestview area. There's some they're non-buildable lots up there, but are they going to be responsible for the cost of removing that? I would think they would be, but I'm not sure what the
We'll follow up when people are done speaking. We'll follow up with your questions.
Pardon?
We'll follow up with your questions after
Good.
everybody's done speaking.
And then the other question would be when you're there's a method and to having this removed, and the I'm assuming that the fire department will want to be in charge of how that's removed, because if you have people in there that are not knowledgeable on how to properly remove certain things, it could be done in a not so good way. So I just wondered if that's going to be a responsibility, that they're going to allow somebody to come in there who maybe doesn't know the protocol as to how to remove it safely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ron Williamson, and I live at 2198 Ruby Place, and we're next to the FMZ 19. And I had the fire inspector out to our property, and he did a fabulous job, is very courteous, listened, explained it very well, and really helped us understand the dangers that our property could potentially have. We're right next to a city paper street, which then is adjacent to FMZ 19. So when FMZ 19 gets some fuel modification, that leaves a lot of vegetation in the city street area that then comes up to our house. So one question that I have is, what do we do about dealing with city properties that are adjacent to fuel modifications that that fire will just, rip through that area and come towards the homes? The second question I have that the inspector wasn't as clear on as that I could understand is you might look out and see greenery in some of these city areas or some of these modification areas, but beneath is dead underbrush. So the question is, how do you determine whether or not there's this dead growth underneath the top that's green, which would be a problem, which I understand is if there is fire danger between dead fuel, it'd be a fire marshal issue. But if it's just thick brush that perhaps is green, then it may be just the landowner's issue or perhaps the city's issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Heidi Mueller. I live on Ruby Place. First of all, I really wanted to thank the city for all they have done since the '93 flagration that we had. But secondly, I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask this of our fire representatives, and that is, once they come to my property and check it out and give me advice, is that like letting the cat in and the mouse is toast? In other words, then I'm on your radar and you will do something? That I think is everybody's concern. They may not say this, but that is what it is. And then secondly, we know now that in the Palisades, there wasn't enough water in the fire hydrants. I wanted to know, is there a way to check fire hydrants during the year or one time a year, whether the pressure is enough? And the second question I have is, I live on a very small street where dead end, where now there are many more homes and very large homes. Maybe more water would be necessary. I don't know. Is a fire hydrant, doesn't matter the size of the fire hydrant. But anyway, I think the fire hydrants should be a concern in the future. And that's all I wanted to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Richard Bisson, and I live on 1215 La Mirada Street and 1188 Catella, which is 1188 Catella is at the dead end at the north area of the street, and then my La Mirada property. So it is pretty much adjacent to what you've got outlined here. And really my question is, and by the way, I am absolutely for this. The question is 100 feet, and on this map, I'm struggling to see how much, space it really is. Is it enough? Because if you look on my property, we have this huge, it's kind of a big ravine down there below, La Mirada and Catella. And it's open and it's deep, and there's a very thick brush. There's a lot of eucalyptus trees and other species that, light up pretty good. So my question was, would we consider to do the whole area there, that ravine? And just to show you guys.
If you could kind of direct your comments towards us, and then we'll follow up with questions.
Okay. So if you could just look at the entire area there. So that's my first question. My second question, I hope wildlife isn't going to hold this up. If we got a bobcat or, a family of coyotes. So that would be my second one. And I know we have bobcats there, and we don't really need to put this on hold for another 10 years because there's a bobcat there. And then my next question is, if you go from my house up Del Mar, which is east, you go to the top of the hill, the park, and then you take the drive and you go towards the top of the hill, there's above ground electrical wires. Our neighborhood, about 20 years ago, voted and paid to put the above, the wires from above ground, underground. We did that because we thought the city was going to do it. Well, first, we did it because we thought it was the right thing to do. And then secondly, would the city follow through? And then thirdly, would Edison follow through? So I've lost power, 3 times during that Pacific Palisades fire, and you can't really get a reason, but I'm sensing that it's because of those above ground power lines. They could easily spark. The wind coming from the Santa Anas is east to west. So it's really coming from above us, and so the spark, I saw the Altadena one, the spark there, and then the embers can fly, right? We say a couple miles, right? And then they would fly down into the ravine that I am at, right? And so just, is that under consideration?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Evgeny Krasko. I live at 785 Gainsborough Drive, which is in Diamond Crestview neighborhood. So I don't have any questions. I actually just wanted to express my support for the project. I'm very much aware of the elevated risks of fire in the neighborhood. There's a lot of unmaintained vegetation in the canyons. And the Diamond Street actually serves as the only evacuation route for the entire neighborhood and as the only fire truck access route as well. So it's a dangerous situation, and any mitigation measure would help. And in 1993, a large fraction of our neighborhood was destroyed by fire. So I urge you to approve this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Schneider on Capistrano Avenue at the very low end of it. There is a paper street that Capistrano would continue to be, and we'd like to make sure that that's going to be thoroughly cleaned out. It's well overgrown, and we completely support 5.1 and 5.2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tim Simpson. I live at 748 Diamond, last house on the left of Lower Diamond. I encourage you to approve this program. It makes a lot of sense. I have read the documents. These were the last couple of weeks have been last 3 weeks have been pretty scary. As we see it, the biggest risk is having fire coming over the hill and engulfing our neighborhood. And I'm hoping the Coastal Commission doesn't hold this up, or Fish and Wildlife. It's all about risk management. And, think about if we had a catastrophic fire like happened before in Laguna, and Coastal Commission held up doing something that would actually protect some of these homes. So if there is, resistance, hopefully there's a political means that the city can undertake to get, to overturn the Coastal Commission, because they should not be able to hold this up. This is too important. Another thing is the issue of using Roundup only on non-native vegetation. I'm a civil and a geotechnical engineer in California. I've been practicing for over 40 years. And there's a lot of controversy over Roundup. I get it. But, the critters we're trying to protect are going to be eviscerated in a big fire. So it's about risk management. And I realize there's probably a political reason to limit the use of Roundup to only the non-vegetated, the non-native, but the native can still burn. So I think if you're going to do this, go all in and use whatever tools are available, and don't let concerns about the critters that will be gone anyway prevent them, complete cleanup. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Acosta. I live at 812 Gainsborough, and I'll make it pretty short and sweet. The homes or the empty lots around me are filled with vegetation, a lot of it dry, dead, dried, and looks like it can go off in a spark. So I fully support your initiative to go and clean up these areas, and I hope you can do it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lucas Heckma. I'm also in Diamond Crestview. And yeah, I'm very concerned about my home insurance and just my life, frankly, and my family, my friends' lives. And so, yeah, I strongly support this as well. And just wanted to add my voice of support. And thank you. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Paul Zafin, 831 Gainsborough Drive. Since I came here, I thought I might as well talk, and I support this, obviously. Anything you can do to help us in that is important. What I think you should do, though, in the future is that any new housing should not be allowed to do wood frame housing. I mean, if you think about this thing, all you have here are all these wood frame houses that are just tinderbox. And I think in an environment like this, you really need, I'm an architect, by the way, you should build in incombustible type 1 construction for what that's worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Arlene Hammond, and I live at 7 Pacific Vista. I'm concerned about what everybody else is concerned about. I just spent almost $3,000 having a big pine tree taken out before, you know, in other words, concerned about my home and my neighbor's home because I know what fire does. It'll rush right up past us to the next place. But the main thing I wanted to mention tonight is when we moved in, we could drive Diamond all the way through. It didn't stop at I guess what is being called the Diamond, that turnaround area there. You could walk, you can still walk, but you could drive all the way through. And I don't know whether it's the homeowner that's next to it that's stopping that, or whether it's something in the city, but there's a reason, there's got to be a reason that is no longer a street that is usable for any of us with our egress coming down from any of the other streets. The only place we have to go is Lower Diamond, and everybody is going to be converging on the same spot. So I think it ought to be looked into. Like I said, I don't know that the city owns that property or why we were able to drive through at that time. Everybody drove through, but that was 20 years ago. And now it hasn't been open for probably 12 to 15 years. So it's right next to what you're calling Diamond Canyon. I think that you're familiar with what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christy Armstrong, and I'm at 1059 Baja Street. So we're on Lower Baja in the Diamond, in the Fire Modification Zone 19. One question I have that could possibly be answered is when they're doing the modification, I'm assuming from what our Min said earlier, is that it's the understory that's being cleared. That may not be clear to a lot of people, or maybe I'm not clear on that, but I'm assuming when they do the modification that it's the understory that gets cleared out and all the non-native, and the native bushes and trees and the lemonade berries, et cetera, get cleared from the bottom up. And so I just wanted to get clarification on that. But I do approve of the modification for both of these projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Weeks. I'm up in Diamond Crestview as well, on Diamond Street, actually. I'm in full support of everything you're saying, and thank you for hopefully getting it approved. I wanted to mention, though, that one of my neighbors down in the lower part of Diamond Canyon wanted to cut down one of the eucalyptus trees that is on his property a few weeks ago. They were there trimming the top of the tree, getting ready to take it down, and a neighbor on the other side of the canyon came out and called the police. The police came, it was a whole to-do, and the police stopped him from trimming or cutting down his own tree and made him go down to the city and pull a permit because he wanted to do his own fuel modification. And I think that's a super dangerous precedent. If we can't cut down and maintain our own properties, where are we going here? It's all for naught. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, I will close the public comment. There was a number of questions there, many of which don't really directly pertain to what's being asked of us here tonight. But if you would, I wrote them down. I don't know if you guys would like to address any of them. Or I think it's mostly directed towards the fire representatives. But here, if you guys want to come back up to the table, I'll run through some of them. You know, and just to the public, again, we're talking about this fuel modification zone, which generally is, you know, around the neighborhood itself. So issues regarding private properties and that typically are separate issues unless the private properties are within the fuel modification zone itself proper. But say some of these neighbors, they were mentioning that there are empty lots in the neighborhood and other that are not currently built on, but privately owned that are overgrown and stuff. How is the fire department dealing with that?
Thank you. So if the vacant lot falls within the boundaries of the fuel modification zones, then they will be addressed under that program. And if it is not, if it's outside of those boundaries, and if it's a private property or even public property, then the local residents can call or email us or go online, fill out a form and voice their areas of concern to us. And we will go out and take a look at every single complaint and handle them one at a time. If it's a private property, then we have a protocol for that. We will go ahead and notify the property owner. We'll send them a notice, giving them a certain amount of time to go ahead and clear any hazard that we deem to be hazardous, any vegetation or any issue that we deem that to be hazardous. So we'll go through a process that we have to go through according to our municipal code and what the law requires us to do. And if it's a public property, then we'll discuss that and we'll bring it up to our Public Works Division. We'll work with them to see if there's anything we need to do on those public properties. And also, when we look at the bigger picture of the relation where the area of concern is in relation to structures. So the lot of parameters we have to look at and evaluate when we go out with any concern that anyone brings to our attention.
Okay, and that kind of relates to somebody was mentioning, you know, adjacent to maybe this fuel modification zone area, city streets with city-owned trees and stuff. Generally speaking, as you guys are out and evaluating the neighborhoods, if you saw what you consider to be a hazardous city-owned tree or overgrown tree or something like that, there is a process to deal with that.
Correct. We work with our partners, of course, Public Works and any other division within the city, department within the city to address those that we deem those to be a hazard. Absolutely.
Okay, and there was a concern about if a private property owner calls out the fire department for an inspection of their personal property, and they come out and you note some things that you would like to see corrected, it doesn't put them on the naughty list or something where then
No, it doesn't. And however, if we do receive a complaint, we have an obligation to respond to complaints. I do want to throw that out there. But no, we wouldn't put them on a naughty list, not at all.
Okay, and I know in the city, there has been cases of private properties that have actually been forced through court orders and stuff it's very rare, but it does happen on occasion where somebody who's simply not taking care of their property could be forced to do something.
I just wanted to add to that. There's limitations. We can only enforce the fire code, but what we're mostly asking people to do is take consideration of putting a block underneath their wooden decks so that it keeps the vegetation out from underneath it, changing their vents on their house, which is how the embers get in. The ember cast starts the attic fires. And just take consideration for like where you're stacking wood or you have other, vegetation or debris. These are all just recommendations that are things that we can suggest to help them keep their home safe, including removing some of the vegetation that's close to the house. But these are all things that are not within the fire code that we can enforce. So unless we see something, incredibly egregious, we would have to take action. But I mean, 99% of the conversation is truly for the homeowner's benefit.
Okay, and I know during a recent city meeting that dealt with kind of a follow-up on the other recent fires that we've had, that there was representatives from the water districts and stuff that were talking about the changes that have been made to the city's infrastructure to improve our resiliency towards that and trying to maintain adequate water pressure and everything. So I would guess that's out of your hands, more or less. I mean, or does the fire department go around and test fire hydrants or anything like that? Or
a couple things. Yeah, out of our hands, separate water districts, but not to say that of great concern. We met with 2 of our water districts yesterday. The subcommittee did in the first meeting. So we had them at the table, and they understand and they want to be, good partners in this. So they're going through some testing and they're bringing information to the table of how much they've added, the capacity of their storage tanks and what their system's built for, and also taking in some of the recommendations. They're at the table with us brainstorming. So I think as a result of this study, and it's going to take time, we're going to get renewed information about their capacity and limitations. But they've made some significant improvements since the 93 fires.
Okay. And there was some discussion about wildlife and stuff, and the analysis that went through the process that this had to go through to get to this point, and the initial study and all that. It talks about wildlife and critical plants and stuff like that. So that's all been evaluated and stuff. So the priority has been put on life safety issues and property issues. Correct? Yeah. Utility undergrounding, again, I'm sure you guys would love to see that happen everywhere throughout town, but again, that's a separate issue that is out of the hands of the fire department.
And we're in communications with our providers, and they'll be having representation at that subcommittee as well. But we have been pushing the undergrounding projects. We're looking at the large one with Laguna Canyon Road that was identified in the 2019 plan. There's been talk from our electeds about trying to get the rest of the city taken care of and seeing if we can somehow expedite the process. So, and there was a question specifically about the area that was undergrounded, but they know that adjacent to them, the project hasn't taken place. These take place by circuits. And so unfortunately, we want the hazard to be removed by having all the undergrounding projects completed, but they're still on circuits. So when the power company starts to do their shutoffs, they will first send out a message and tell you what circuit that they're looking at that has a potential of being shut off within the next 4 hours. And then they shut that entire circuit down. So right now they don't have a way to separate the area that has been undergrounded. It's all tied together in the same circuit.
And that's all due, again, to the utilities' concerns about their above-ground utilities, right? So if the entire town was undergrounded, there would be no need for them to do these shutoffs. Is that more or less
That's our
correct?
hopes. But again, a separate entity, but that would be our hopes, yes.
Okay. And somebody mentioned something about paper streets, and in a number of these neighborhoods up in Arch Beach Heights and stuff, there's a bunch of paper streets and stuff that are on a map but are never built on and never going to be built on. if it's within the fuel modification zone, it's being dealt with as outlined. And if it's not, it's outside the fuel modification zone, correct?
But it sounds like on the ones that are not, that it's really up to the residents to file a request that these paper streets be looked at, and then you'll look at them, right? I mean, you don't go out and look at them all automatically. It takes an action on the part of the neighborhood residents to get a focus on those areas of concern. And then you will have a look and see if there's something that you need to do.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. If it's outside of the fuel mod zone, we'll
What's a
follow up
paper
on
street?
complaints.
Subdivision that was never built. Yeah, a paper street is like, yeah, it's on the map, but it's not an actual paved street. It's going out in the middle of nowhere. One of the members of the public were up speaking about a section of Diamond Crestview or Diamond Street that used to be usable that's not. I'm not unaware of exactly what that's about, and I don't know if you can shed any light on that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but I'll be glad to meet with the resident afterwards and see if we can figure out. I'll be glad to meet with them afterwards and take down the information and get back with them with anything that we can provide information with them on that.
Okay. You may follow up on that with the city representatives later to see what they say about that. I don't know if you can shed any light about the process for what is the current process for tree removal on private property? Does that require a special, and maybe, I don't know, city staff can weigh in on that. Does that require a special permitting process?
The answer is it depends. There are different categories, and depending on which category the tree falls under, it may require a tree removal permit. If it's on the private property and there's no design review approved landscape plan, there would be no such requirement. I think in many cases, the trees are actually off the private property. They may be privately be maintained by the adjacent landowner. But in those situations, there is a requirement for a tree removal permit. And there may also be additional requirements for private trees on private property that are on an approved landscape plan.
Okay, thanks.
But if there's no plan and it's on private property, likelihood is you can just take it down.
That is correct.
And then somebody was just talking a little bit about new construction standards, and there are the state is moving forward with new construction standards for new construction. I'm sure I'm not sure through the fire department or on the city's website or certainly online, there's information available to members of the public on things that you can do as a homeowner to help fire harden your home. And there are certain things that are known to be problematic with a lot of the current construction and previous construction techniques, having open eaves, having improperly screened vents into the attics that allow the embers to get in, having combustible surfaces for the wall coverings and many other things and stuff. So I think if anybody was interested in that, they could find that information online. I think that hit on most of the questions. Or did I
think there
miss
was
anything?
one where there was a request just from clarification on what the actual process is within the 100 feet. Like which plants do you take out and how do you thin? And are all natives preserved or just some? If you could just give a quick description on that.
Right. That's all in our treatment protocol that was included in this packet that was presented to committee. And so our idea is to eliminate all flashy fuel, including all non-native vegetation, of course, and possibly reducing up to 50% of the native vegetation that is protected under the State Species Act, Protection Act. So basically, and then trimming up trees when necessary, up to 6 or 7 feet to eliminate that ground ladder fuel. So there are techniques out there that's in our treatment protocol to ensure that we get the maximum protection by way of our treatment protocol. when the crews go through, and they're very experienced crews that the city contracts with, and they're overseen by our main contractor, Laguna Canyon Foundation, who has been doing this for several years with the city, and they have a solid reputation in their work, and they're actually true professionals out there that really review and maintain and keep an eye on the crews that are out there working and clearing this vegetation out. So it's done very methodically and according to what the law allows us, and to provide the maximum protection for our homeowners and for the land, and of course for the habitat as well that's out there.
And anybody who's interested in any of that information, if you go to the city's website and click on agendas, it'll and go to this planning commission meeting, all this documentation is available on there, and it's extensive, and it outlines the protocols that they're using. It outlines the whole environmental analysis and all that. There was a mention about the California Coastal Commission, and it's not so much a question. It was, but in my understanding, we've been through this process. The city has been through this process on other fuel modification zones previously that have gone through and been approved by the California Coastal Commission. These current proposals for these fuel modification zones do not substantially differ from those previous approvals. So there's no anticipation that there's going to be any problem with getting California Coastal Commission approval. However, depends how long they actually take to do that.
Right.
And as was also asked as a question, and you've already responded to, the idea of, is this 100-foot distance adequate? It sounds as though that's being further evaluated based on recent events, that that standard has been around for years, and that may have to be modified in the future for better protection.
Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I just learned something very recently about evacuation zones in our community, and I think a lot of people are not aware of them, because I certainly haven't been. I've been here for 48 years. So can you briefly just describe what those are and how people can access that in the case of an emergency, so that we don't clog our streets up with people just panicking and trying to get out of town?
Yeah, we're hearing this quite a bit. This is also available on the website, our evacuation zone maps, and the geographic areas, they're divided up into separate zones. Zones are assigned a number, and what we hope would happen is that as we push out the information, either through the outdoor warning system, through Nixle, over radio, that if a fire is approaching the city, we would prioritize those zones. If it's a large flame front, obviously we would get everybody moving as quickly as possible. But if it's just approaching, say, the north end of Laguna Beach, we would activate those zones and give them specific direction of what routes to take. Obviously only a few ways in and out, but we would tell them, which direction to go on Coast Highway. So it's so that the entire city doesn't try to move at once, and we have more of a organized fashion to evacuate.
And folks can access that either through the site or the emergency systems of the local radio station or Nixle alerts, because it's interesting that very few people that I've talked to about it have even heard of it. So it's something that I think needs to be more out in the public purview, so that people can understand that there's sort of an order to how we potentially will evacuate the town in the event of a major event here. So.
One of our about 5 initiatives that we're looking at is to make sure that public communication is renewed. So we were talking about flyers or mailers, even possibly conducting some sort of drill, even if it's just simulation, where we are using the outdoor warning system. And the other proposal that we received was actually starting to put signs up in the city that recognize what zone you're in. So there's a lot of ideas of how we're going to renew this education.
I wonder if you put a sort of a small map of Laguna with the evacuation zones clearly delineated in the local newspaper from time to time, just so people.
We have one, and it is on the city's website.
Okay, all right. Anyways, I just wanted to bring that up because I think a lot of people just don't know about it.
Have you been on the local radio station? Either of you?
quite a bit.
Good, okay.
KXFM has asked us to give several updates, especially when Red Flag started and then the Palisades happened. But I think I did 3 different occasions, so 1-hour interviews. And they also let me know that they were taking some of the pertinent information that was given and replaying it every hour during those Red Flag events. So
Great.
great resource.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you so much to staff for the presentation. Thank you to our fire department officials for all the information that they provided for this. Thanks to all the members of the public for your thoughtful comments. I will close the public hearing and we will go to commission action. Commissioner Goldman.
It's hard to be anything but completely supportive of this.
Ditto, in full support.
As am I. This is, as it was stated, similar to the previous ones that we've approved. And it's, the only question I have is can we do more? And I guess we are limited by what we're limited by now, but we can certainly ask for them to reevaluate and see if we need to do more.
Yeah, total support, but I hope the state they must understand the urgency of all of this, but it's really hard to feel it because it moves at a very sluggish pace. Likewise, same comment would apply to the Coastal Commission. I mean, this is like a war with the environment, a war with fire, and we have to change our behavior, including how quickly we approve things. We have to expedite things and really get on it. I mean, we haven't had any indication that that's happening at the local, or not here in Laguna. I mean, more at the county or the state level. So I'd just like to add a really very alarmed by the situation.
Yeah, no, I'm in full support. I know that this project has been fully vetted by every agency that was required. Obviously public safety is our number one priority here. I think one of our council members said it very succinctly recently that, we have to think beyond our personal property and think of this in a bigger picture of the community. And so when it comes to taking care of your property, dead vegetation around it, or clearing trees off your roof, those kinds of things. It's not just about your home, it's about the entire community. As far as any kind of herbicides, if they are used, I mean, it's something that we'd like to stay away from, but if it's necessary, it's another tool in the toolbox, and I don't think it should be completely disregarded or not used if it's inappropriate in a situation. And one other thing, I was here in the '93 fire in Laguna Canyon. I never left the property I still occupy, and I did make a video VHS at that time. Of the fire coming down Laguna Canyon and then jumping at the property I occupy, which caused the Canyon Acres and Skyline fires. And it happened very quickly. It was completely out of control. And I do have a DVD copy of that I'm happy to give Chief King if you would like that. It starts off kind of comically in a way, I would say, and as time goes on, and it goes through the night, and then I did drive down onto Canyon Acres the next morning and videotape that neighborhood, and it's very scary and it's very frightening to see what happened here in this town. So these programs are not only necessary, but as Chair Sadler said, we need to probably do a lot more if we're going to really fully try to armor our town from one of these devastating wildfires. So I am absolutely in full support.
Great. Thank you so much. If somebody would please make a motion for both items separately, item 5.1 and 5.2.
I'll move that We adopt a resolution approving design review 242681 and adopt an initial study mitigated negative declaration with a mitigation monitoring and reporting program pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act and the state CEQA guidelines.
Is there a
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman?
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg?
Yes.
Chair Sadler?
Yes. Okay, moving on to 5.2.
I'll take a stab at it. Adopt a resolution approving design review 24-2046, coastal development permit 24-2047. Adopt the initial study and mitigated negative declaration with mitigation monitoring and reporting program pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act and state CEQA guidelines.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Goldman beat him to on the second.
Oh, wow.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman?
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg?
Yes.
Chair Sadler?
Yes. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Thank you all to all the members of the public who made your comments heard. All right, we'll give everybody a moment to clear out who wants to clear out before we move on to our next item, 5.3.
There's a private property owner, 29-year-old male. Can I? Yeah. So Irish. Well, no, ask for neighbors. Fire started. Chainsaws or whatever, and about to spark, all of a sudden. Fire. I think that's a good allow that to do it, that's very problematic. It's, you know, correctly and maybe. Well, you know, you're not getting your tip. That's it. That's good.
Okay, it seems as things quieted down here. We will move on to item 5.3, which is sign permit 23-0091 at at 401 Glen Eyrie Street. And our planning technician, Sarah Olson, will be providing us with the staff report on this tonight. Whenever you're ready, Sarah.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Item 5.3 is request for approval of a sign permit for Farmers and Merchants Bank located at 401 Glen Eyrie Street. The property is located at the intersection of Laguna Avenue and Glen Eyrie Street within the Commercial Business District Office Zone of the Downtown Specific Plan area. The subject building is a 3-story, 10,835 square foot office building that is currently occupied by Farmers and Merchants Bank, Laguna Beach Dental Arts, and a parking garage at the lower level. The building was originally granted design review and variance approvals on February 15th, 2023, and on May 15th, 2024, the Planning Commission approved design review to modify the prior approval. The modifications included new and reconfigured building materials, giving the building a more contemporary appearance, and on July 3rd, 2024, the Planning Commission once more approved design review to modify the prior approvals, which included a revised parapet wall design and new building colors, which is what we see today. While the facade improvements are nearing completion, there are 2 outstanding items, which are the perforated metal panels that will mount on the northeast and southeast corners of the building, and the sunshades that will be mounted along the west elevation. At this time, the building contains 2 wall signs on the east elevation and 1 wall sign on the south elevation near the ATM, all of which were approved administratively due to the letter heights not exceeding 8 inches. The proposed project includes the installation of one illuminated canopy sign and one illuminated logo wall sign along the Laguna Avenue elevation. The canopy sign will sit atop the leading edge of the existing trellis and will consist of green painted aluminum lettering with letter heights of up to 18 inches and span a length of 14 feet 11 inches, resulting in a total sign area of 22.4 square feet. The canopy sign will contain LED modules that shine onto white backers, resulting in halo illumination, and no light will transmit through the sign face. The proposed logo wall sign will be located on the upper left corner of the building facade directly below the parapet ribbon and will be mounted onto the perforated metal panels. The sign will consist of two superimposed painted aluminum panels with a total sign area of 20 square feet. The outer panel will be painted to match the existing building trim color in warm white and will be routed to reveal the recessed gold panel revealing the applicant's logo. The logo sign will contain LED modules mounted between the two panels along the outer edge, so the light will only shine inward across the gold lettering, resulting in a total illuminated area of 9.68 square feet. Overall, staff finds that the proposed signs meet the objective design standards for a canopy and logo wall sign. Attached to the staff report is a resolution of approval making the required findings and approving the signs as presented by the applicant. However, staff recommends that the Planning Commission carefully consider the logo wall sign, its location, and its proposed lighting. As discussed in the staff report, the sign would sit approximately 30 feet above the ground elevation of Laguna Avenue and was scaled appropriately to compensate for the distance between the sign and the traffic at street level. The applicant is currently proposing 7100 Kelvin LEDs, which is a cooler color that will appear brighter than a warm color alternative. If the Planning Commission agrees that the proposed scale of the sign is appropriate but finds that it may not be visually compatible with the surrounding physical environment, the sign could be modified to use a warmer color temperature for the illumination, or the lighting could be omitted entirely to have the sign serve as more of a subtle building marker. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the project and find said action exempt from CEQA, and that concludes my presentation, and I'll be available for questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions of staff?
Just a quick one. So in February of 2023 was when the initial approvals were made, and that did include the perforated architectural feature. Is that correct?
I'm not too sure.
Yes,
Okay,
that is
thank you.
correct.
That's my question.
Commissioner Whiten.
Can you explain why the farmer and merchants sign facing Laguna Avenue is not an illuminated sign? From the description in the staff report, it sounds like it's internally
The
Lit.
canopy sign or the
No.
logo wall sign?
the lower, or the
logo-
canopy, sorry, the
the canopy
canopy
sign.
sign. Yeah.
The LED modules are mounted to the back of the green letters and project onto the white backers. So it's projecting away from the sign, not through the green lettering.
So it's backlit, lighting the profile.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like
Okay.
a halo light.
Yeah, okay.
I have one more quick question. On page 8 of the plans, it shows the logo sign attached. From what I looked at, it looks like it's attached directly to the building and does not show the perforated metal required in the original entitlements.
Where is it, George?
Page 8 of the plans.
Oh, of the.
Oh,
plans.
basically, how is it going to attach to the wall if there's a perforated metal?
Well, it doesn't show the perforated, it just shows it attached directly to
that's
the
right.
wall.
Mhm.
That's probably a question for the applicant or the
Okay.
sign. Oh.
Yes, I would agree, Chair. The detail is probably pretty standard, and this condition with the perforated panel that's a little bit offset from the face of the building is a little atypical. I think this detail is a little bit more standardized, but the applicant could clarify how that sign would attach to the building.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick one. Maybe you said this, but I know I read it, and that is that the 22 square feet exceeds the guidelines, which is only 15 square feet. for the canopy sign?
I can answer that question, Commissioner. The 15 square foot sign area limitation in the downtown specific plan is a restriction that applies only to wall signs. And the sign that's mounted onto that trellis or canopy falls under a different sign type. That would be considered a canopy sign per the city's sign regulations.
Because the staff report kind of read like it was inconsistent with the 15 feet. Why even mention the 15 feet if it's not applicable?
That's for the logo wall sign. So the logo wall sign that's attached to the.
That's the one that's over?
It's over, yeah. Typically, it would be limited to 15 feet, and they're proposing 20.
Okay.
So,
So I got the two mixed up.
it's within our
But
discretion.
But the same question. I mean, so it exceeds the guideline.
It exceeds what is typically allowed. And there's an additional provision in the downtown specific plan document that states that the planning commission has discretion over logo signs and can regulate the logo based on.
But there, I would assume, I mean, if there's a guideline for 15 feet, there was a reason for that. And so if it exceeds that, there needs to be a justification of some sort.
I think that would be fair, Commissioner.
Commissioner Golden?
Are LED lights such as this commonplace in the city, beyond Coast Highway and major thoroughfares?
Yeah, I actually have an example to share with you of some surrounding lighting in the downtown area of what they used. I would just need a minute to pull it up.
Not everything's LED.
And while Sarah's pulling that up, the city essentially permits two methods of sign illumination. It's the gooseneck lamps that are mounted above the fixture and is directed downwards towards the sign face, or halo illumination. And these days, pretty much everything operates on LEDs.
Do you have a breakdown of the cool and the warm LEDs? I mean, we have LEDs, a lot of LEDs, but do we have a breakdown about what percentage is cool and which is
That's
warm?
going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Where's the break? I don't know much about Kelvins and lights.
I could pull up like a
So
diagram.
the higher number, the brighter white it is, and the lower number, the warmer it is.
But, and what's considered, what's like the break point where above that point it starts to,
Like 3,000 is warm, and then
But
above that. goes
7,100
cool.
is
that's hot.
daylight.
Yeah.
It's daylight,
yeah.
basically.
So Skyloft, that's at 6,500, would be considered on the brighter
Cool.
range.
Yeah, Rivian's at 35. Mm-hmm.
Skyloft's probably not as light these days.
Skyloft is dark.
Okay, any other questions at this point? The applicant team, you have 5 minutes if you need it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Lima. I'm with Signs and Services Company. We're the applicant representing Farmers and Merchants Bank. I want to address, first and foremost, a couple of comments that I heard you guys make with regard to the questions on the lighting and then also with regard to the size. While the wall sign actually has a total square footage of 20 feet, that is not the letter square footage. That's the overall panel dimension. The letter square footage is only, I believe it was around 9 square feet. The panel does connect directly to the building, and we've worked with the architect to design it so that it fits in the middle of the perforated panels. So the perforated panels will stop and meet the edge of the sign panel, and it'll all be uniform in color. The LEDs, there was an error in our plans with the 7100. That's normally what we use for internally illuminated acrylic face letters, like your typical Starbucks letter, because you're projecting through the face of acrylic. We have a photo example in here of the sign from Corona Del Mar, and we used 4,000 on that. And so we would propose to utilize the same color temperature as we did in Corona Del Mar.
Okay.
I think that's about what I wanted to share. If you guys have any questions for me.
The question that everybody's waiting to ask you is, when are the metal screens going to show up?
I understand that they've been shipped twice and they arrived damaged both times.
To a microphone so we can.
The panels arrived damaged in November and then again 2 weeks ago. So we're now on to our third round of refinishing the panels. So we have no date yet.
When you
This-
say damaged, I mean, are they bent? Are they scratched?
No,
or-
they're scratched. And they don't know how they're being scratched. They're either scratched in shipping, they're packed too soon before the powder coating has cured. We don't know why, they're just showing up damaged. I sent
they're-
images to Anthony of
Right.
the current
So they're
panels.
powder coated aluminum, is that what you? that what they are?
Correct.
So they're not painted,
Yes.
in other words?
No, they're powder coated.
Okay.
So it's not something that you can just
No, I'm
patch
very
and-
familiar with powder
Yeah,
coating. so-
unfortunately, it's something that we can't.
I have
Mess around with.
another, thank you. Now we have the answer. Good luck. Third time's a charm, as they say. I was just curious because the canopy sign, the dark green, it just doesn't have a lot of contrast. And I assume that's like your corporate colors or something but it,
Correct. The green and gold.
I think
are
it'll read
corporate.
great at night, because of the halo, but during the
Right.
day, it's pretty
Well,
low contrast.
That's why we have the white backer panel, to give it a brighter color to read against and help increase the readability of the letters. It also provides a surface area for the halo illumination to bounce off of. Halo illumination works by bouncing the light off of whatever surface the sign is mounted to.
Yeah, well, you confused me a little bit there. So when I'm looking at the staff report and it shows an elevation of the building itself, but then you said something about a white backer panel. Is there a whole rectangular white
No,
panel?
no,
behind-
it's the letter contour. The
Okay.
white backer is, so in the rendering,
Right.
you just probably see a white outline.
Okay.
That's
Oh, okay.
And
I
then-
was seeing a little blue dash line around it, but I think that's just indicating overall dimensions or something. So,
Correct.
okay. So basically you've got the green letters and it has a white backing that just a trim basically that goes, visible trim that would be around each green letter.
right. What it actually is you would have a flat aluminum white letter.
Right.
So the F backer would be shaped like the F. It's only about an inch beyond.
It just doesn't show up on the rendering very well, I guess.
Right there, we have the white outline.
Okay, so that would give it a little bit more contrast against
Blow it
the
up,
darker brown or whatever background that is on
Okay.
the building itself. Okay. Any other additional questions?
Yeah, is there some reason you don't have a blade sign? This is a pedestrian environment and the traffic is very, very slow at this intersection, and a blade sign might be very visible to people. Have you just chosen not to do that?
Right. We have two lower wall signs that are at pedestrian level that are non-illuminated.
But is that for farmers and merchants? Or
For farmers and merchants and also for the bank, the dentist that
Right.
occupies the property.
I'm talking about a blade sign, which is an over-the-counter sign. You wouldn't have to come to us for it.
No, that was not what we were intending to do. It was never part of our plan.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I will, any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and we will go to commissioner discussion. Anybody in particular like to begin?
I'll start.
Okay.
So, this project was entitled now 2 years ago, I think, February of 2023. And at that time, the perforated panels were part of the approval. I'm not sure why, after knowing that those were part of the project for 2 years, that they only showed up in November of 2024 and now have been obviously damaged twice. But, I know that there was some other things that happened. I'm not going to get into that. But what I would like to suggest to the commission tonight, that I don't have a problem with the signs, but I would like to see if my fellow commissioners would agree to conditioning the installation of the logo sign based on the perforated being in place first. That's my comment.
Okay, we'll think about that. Okay, Commissioner Whiten.
Yes, I am not in favor of the illuminated square sign, the F&M. I'd like to see that stripped down to the letters, no lighting. I think it's oversized for that location, and pin mounted on the building. I don't have any trouble with the canopy sign, but I think it's really overkill to have that size sign illuminated at that location. And both of the signs, or the intention is to have 4,000 K. Is that what you said? Okay. Those are my comments.
Commissioner Kellenberg.
Well, now you got me thinking.
That statement.
I would, I don't feel that strongly about the size of the sign. I'm fairly happy with the proposal as it stands. But I would defer to the other commission members.
Commissioner Goldman.
I'm also supportive of the size of the sign. I think the illumination in general just seems, I would prefer to have it as cool as possible. I agree with you on the other sign. I'd illuminate the canopy sign and leave the other one unilluminated. So, so this doesn't look like Las Vegas.
Okay, well, I think what the staff report pointed out was that the logo sign is, somewhat larger than would typically be allowed, but it's within our discretion to allow it. And the, size of the individual letters for the canopy sign is somewhat larger than would typically be recommended for the downtown specific plan area. And where these have been, excesses above the typical have been proposed on other projects, it's usually come down to, is there some sort of justification for that? And I think the staff report tried to point out some potential justifications for it. This is a larger intersection here in town with two-lane, minimum two-lane, 4 lanes of Glen Eyrie. There are 2 lanes of Laguna Street there. So it's a relatively large intersection. So that does provide some additional distance from traffic to the building face itself. And the fact that it's elevated to the height that it is on the building, I feel is an adequate justification for the additional sign size. So, and I'm okay. I'm really okay with both of the signs as they're currently being proposed, with the reduction of the LED lighting as stated, that it would be at the 4,000 Kelvin level. So that leaves us with some potential disagreement amongst the commissioners. I would, and I don't want to be punitive or anything about any of this. And I understand stuff happens and regarding the panels and everything, but, I'd be willing to go along with Commissioner Dubin's suggestion that the wall sign not be installed before the panels are installed. And, that they're dependent upon the panels being installed. So that I would agree with that. So I guess I kick it back to the other commissioners, how strongly they feel about. It seems as though, from what I heard, everybody's in agreement and okay with the canopy sign. So it comes down to.
Can we ask a question of the applicant on why the panels, the first shipment of the panels arrived like a couple years after the approval? The first time?
We did not order the panels until we had our second planning commission hearing because the fabrication takes so long. If the planning commission had denied our request for the parapet modification, other elements would have had to have been adjusted. So we couldn't order them until after that was completed, which was the end of the summer of last year. And then it's 16 weeks for fabrication.
Thank you.
And as to the installation, the panels have to go on first. The sign can't be on when they're lifting the panels, so the sign comes in second.
Okay, so you would have no objection
None at all.
to that?
None at
Okay,
all.
and you have no objection to the reduction of the light?
No,
the light.
not
okay.
yeah, that's.
Okay, I, to address this issue of this logo sign, I go to finding 4, which says the height, font size of letters must be proportional to the allowed sign size and its location. The height of the letters is okay. The font size should primarily be related to location. Signs in the downtown area should feature smaller font sizes to attract pedestrians and slow-moving nearby traffic. That's all we have right here is slow-moving traffic. That intersection is the slowest intersection in the entire city. So I don't see any justification for lighting it. It's not, that's not a busy street at night. And I think that the canopy sign would do the job because people are stopping at the intersection and it's very visible, it's very handsome. But this sign really does feel glitzy to me. It doesn't just, it feels like something separate from the architectural design and the refinement of the panels, which I think are really a nice touch on the building. Just seems a little Vegas-esque to me. So I thought, well, okay, how do you keep that but tone it down? And okay, the letter size is one thing, but then the illumination and all the build-up, the square and a square and up on the panel. So that's where I'm coming from. I think it just is calling out for, Coast Highway. I mean, this is the kind of thing. And remember, we had quite a discussion with Rivian about whether they should even illuminate their logo.
So your proposal is not to change the size, just to take away the lighting?
Yeah,
and
strip
take-
everything else
and
and
take
the
away
light.
the panel behind it?
Yeah.
Will it be readable without the contrast with the panel behind it?
Well, the color looks, what is it, goldish? Yeah, goldish greenish kind of, gold. Yeah, it'll be subtle, but it'll be nice, Yeah, I think it competes with the building, frankly.
In the evening, it would not be visible at all. During the daytime, there's slight contrast. We have this type of sign on 5 or 6 locations now. And the stencil shadow box is very subtle and it's not glitzy, but I do understand what you're envisioning. But it's a more refined logo than a pin set with rear illuminated lighting. And it's just a product that we have on other buildings that we like the look of it. But the tone and lower lighting level, I think, will solve quite a bit of that.
Okay, appreciate your input, but we're getting out of order here because we've closed the public hearing and we're not supposed to be doing this back and forth like that. So it really comes down to, do we have support for Commissioner Whiten's opinion on this or not?
I think, the illumination doesn't need to happen. I think we've got plenty of signs on the building. I do think that, in terms of conditions of approval, that the logo sign lighting be eliminated and that it doesn't get installed until the perforated is in place. That's my opinion.
She's already agreed to that and says it can't happen that way. So,
Well, the sign fabricator indicated otherwise, that the perforated was cut out and that the sign would be mounted to the building and the perforated would fit in around it. So I think it does need to be conditioned, just to be clear.
okay.
So George, you say illuminate it?
No.
No illuminate, okay.
Okay.
I'm no on the illumination of that too.
Okay. It sounds as though the majority of the commission is not for the illumination of the logo sign. So I don't know if that's a big enough issue for you where you want us to continue this or, okay. So if somebody would make a motion to that effect.
Susan, would you like the honors?
So it's basically,
Chair.
wait, okay. Yes.
If staff could clarify, with the change from illuminated to non-illuminated at the logo wall sign, previously it was suggested that if you stripped that sign of lighting, that there would be no need for the raceway behind it, housing all the electrical components, the square. Just wanted to clarify with the commission if that was your intent to also remove that piece.
I
from the
believe that
sign.
was the intention.
Yeah.
Understood. That's clear. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there?
Wait, before we make a motion, I'll reopen the public hearing and you can come forward. And if you have any questions for us or any additional questions for the applicant, we can do that before we make a motion.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify what I think I overheard is that the logo, can you explain what you're thinking the logo modifications outside of removing the lighting would be?
Commissioner Whiten?
That the logo would be pin mounted onto the panel.
So instead of being a stencil, it would be the logo pin mounted. So
Yeah.
instead of a shadow box, it would just be the logo. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very contemporary look.
No,
That's- yeah.
we're fine with that.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and we'll go to our motion.
We move adoption of a resolution approving sign permit 23-0091 and finding said action exempt from SEQA with the condition that the logo sign is not illuminated and has no backing and is pin mounted to the building.
And is not installed until the perforated is in place.
And is not installed until the perforated panel on that corner of the building is installed.
I'll second.
A roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg,
Yes.
Chair Sadler.
Yes. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Enjoy your new signs and
See you in a-
best wishes for your metal panels to come undamaged. Okay, thanks for your patience. Okay, that was our last regular item, and we will move on to other business. Anthony?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Last night, you had a joint session with the City Council to discuss the promenade design. Staff is going to be coordinating a special meeting with the Planning Commission and the Ad hoc Committee, as well as the design consultant for the project for the end of this month. It will be a workshop-style meeting, so another concept-level discussion. You won't be considering the entitlements, but that will follow sometime in the month of March. So I just wanted to mention that. I will be reaching out to you by email to confirm your availability.
I am going to be out of the country from the 25th through the end of the month. I think,
That last week is bad for me too.
Yeah.
Last week of February.
Thank you. We'll try to work around your availability.
You know, if it comes down to me, don't worry about it if I have to be absent. Anything else?
Ken, we have to have you there.
You sent an email around about a joint meeting of the DRB Planning Commission and Council about objective design criteria. And what's happening with that?
Yes. Seems we jumped the gun with that. That's been postponed for now, so stay tuned. At the state level, each year, state passes new housing laws limiting what the city can do in terms of imposing discretionary subjective design standards to different types of projects, particularly certain types of housing projects. And the city is now in the early planning stages of deciding what do we do about that. And it's intended to ensure that we can maintain the city's special character to the extent that that's within our control.
Okay, is that it for you, Anthony?
Yes, thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
committee, commissioner, or staff reports, or any questions from our?
I've got nothing.
Commissioner
Oddly
Dubin's not going to follow up on your typical question? Okay, nothing new is happening with the Hotel Laguna, apparently. Okay, anything else from anybody? All right, will somebody like to make a motion for adjournment to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which would be on the
19th.
19th?
I move that we adjourn to our next regular scheduled meeting on February 19th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin.
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg,
Yes.
Chair Sadler.
Yes,
Thank you.
we are adjourned. Thank you.